All right, so obviously we are here for the our fall virtual birding seminar. If this is your first virtual birding seminar, welcome. This one is over Backyard Bird Paradises, and I'm so excited. This has kind of been my one I've wanted to host for a long time, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot. So if you can hear me and see our screen shared, everything should be working, and we will get kicked off here. There we go. I will do my very best to get the recordings out to you every day within 24 hours of the conclusion of the seminar like tonight. So hopefully you'll have those recordings for today by tomorrow. One thing that does sometimes challenge is technology isn't always my friend. So I will do my best, but please know that sometimes technology wins. We all are going to follow up with a daily email with an evaluation link. Please take the time to complete that evaluation. It helps us evaluate this program as well as create new and exciting programs for the future. Liz, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. So my name is Liz Tidwell. So I am the Wildlife Program Specialist with AgriLife Extension. I am based out of the Uvalde Center. So the two presentations that we have this evening is, so tonight's speaker, our first one is going to be Haeley, and she's going to talk to us about basically bringing on birds in the backyard. She's going to talk about some of the native plants that can be very much beneficial to the birds in our backyard. Our second speaker this evening is going to be Beth, and Beth is actually the horticultural agent in Gillespie County. So she offices right down from Emily Grant, and she's basically going to talk to us about how to keep your plants alive. Because for some of us, I know myself included, sometimes that is the biggest challenge is you buy the plants, but you cannot keep them alive to save your life. I don't know about you, Emily, but that's definitely me sometimes.
Definitely having some struggle buses in that department. We're excited to share that our Birding the Border program will be in 2026. Sorry, I didn't get the update. So Birding the Border 2026 will be April 29th through May 3rd in 2026. And we will be visiting 3 different ecoregions in one from out of our Del Rio hub. This is our feature program. And so the opportunity to see 193 species in 2025. And we work with our private landowners to facilitate those opportunities. We'll hopefully have registration open super soon. And we'll be sharing that through social media and emails as well. Cup Chat, we always invite you to stay connected with us with our Cup Chat programs. These are at most Wednesday mornings at 7:30. We host these live on our Facebook page, and then the recordings are posted to YouTube afterwards. So with a variety of videos and topics, we hope that you can join us. One of the reasons we're all here today is Rio Diablo Birding Camp. This is the only current advanced young birder camp in Texas. So we're excited to be the facilitators of that. This was brought to us by one of our birding guides, Brian Kalk, with a mission to offer an affordable young birding camp. So with your participation in our virtual birding seminars, we use the proceeds of that to fund scholarships. So I'm so happy to announce that we have funded a little over 6 $500 scholarships to Rio Diablo Birding Camp for the entire year through our virtual birding seminars. So that keeps the cost to $1,000. Through virtual birding seminars, we're able to keep the cost at $1,000 max for each camper. And then those with financial need can get those $500 scholarships, reducing it even further. So we are the most affordable birding camp in the nation, and we're super proud of that. So we take those kids for 7 days from Fort Davis back over through the Devil's River area, back over to San Antonio. So excited about that, and thank y'all for all of y'all's support that's making that possible. Liz?
And lastly, please stay connected with us. You can find us on our Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube. You can sign up for our mostly quarterly newsletter, The Flycatcher. you can just go to our website and then scroll down to the very bottom, and there'll be a little form that you can fill out. And that is a digital newsletter that we have. But yeah, I think that's about it. So I will stop sharing my screen. And Haeley, if you would like to go ahead and share your screen,
Alrighty.
we can get started.
Where did it go? Okay, I should have had that. Hold on 1 second here. I'm gonna stop the share just for a second so I can pull up my. Oh, there we go. Let's try that again. All right, can you see that?
We can.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Please do stop me at any time if, like I said, if I'm having trouble with any of the videos that I'm sharing, or you can't hear me or anything. But just really excited to be here to talk about how to bring on the birds in your yard. This is the first time I'm giving this presentation, so I'm excited to try it out and see what you all think. I have a website called nativebackyards.com that's all about Texas native plants primarily, and I am very involved in the Native Plant Society of Texas. So if you have any questions regarding native plants or the Native Plant Society, feel free to reach out to me after the program. But today I'm talking all about my other love in addition to plants, which is birds. And I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about my own backyard habitat and working very hard on trying to make my backyard the most popular one in the neighborhood for our resident birds. And so these are just some photos of my backyard garden. I started it in around 2020 as I started learning about Texas native plants and replaced some landscaping plants that had been there from the previous owners, and really started extending my garden bed and adding as many plants as I can to add diversity to my backyard. And so I have a great little perch where I like to birdwatch from. Pretty much every weekend morning, you'll find myself and my husband out on our back patio with our binoculars, our cup of coffee, and our Merlin app, just looking to see what we can find. We are the definition of backyard birders. We're still pretty novice birders. I only recently started taking it a little more seriously and doing some of the birding trips. So we did Birding the Border last year for the first time, and that was phenomenal. I highly recommend it. We did the beginner track and we both really enjoyed it. And then just a couple weeks ago, we went to the Guadalupe River Birding Festival, or Guadalupe Valley Birding Festival. That was amazing as well. So once you get started down this path, it's hard to stop. But this is my habitat, and I'll show you some of the visitors that I don't have to go very far to see. I should say that I am not a bird photographer, so please forgive my poor photos of birds that I've taken from my patio or from my window. Any of the good bird pictures in this presentation are probably from Canva, and I've noted where I've used other photos of friends that have better bird photos than my own. But these are some of the birds that like to visit my patio. I have a fun feeder, or it's a bird bath really, that hangs off of the railing there, and that gets regular visitors every day, cardinals and blue jays. And then for the last 5 or so years, we've had a Carolina wren family nest in one of my pots on the patio. And these couple pictures are from some babies that had just emerged from the nest, and they were looking in the window. And I've been able to catch them emerging, fledging, the last couple years, and it's just so fun to witness. It's really miraculous. So I love learning about my backyard birds, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of tally up what I generally see on a regular basis and see if your list is similar or not. I should say that I'm based in San Antonio. That's where I'm at. So your birds may differ depending on where you're located. But if I was to think of the daily visitors I see some loud and noisy blue jays pretty regularly, especially visiting my little water feature in that previous photo. Definitely a male and female cardinal are never far away. Carolina wrens are the ones that wake me up every morning, the family that lives in my backyard. And then I will have chickadees and titmice visiting together in a group in our live oak trees, always chittering and making noises, chatting about. So I know that they're here. A few times a day I hear them. White-winged doves are often perched on the power lines behind our house. A northern mockingbird has just recently kind of started visiting my yard on a daily basis ever since my American beautyberry shrub started producing berries earlier this fall. It's been around, so that's been a fun addition. And then white-eyed vireo is one that I don't see very often. It's a pretty secretive little bird, but I often hear it. And the eastern phoebe I have perched on my cafe lights that we have strung across our backyard patio, kind of looking for insects to dive down and get. So those are my daily visitors. There very well could be many more that I just don't observe, but in addition, I do get woodpeckers quite often. I had a golden-fronted woodpecker visiting my backyard earlier today. I saw it from my kitchen window and it had stopped to take a drink from a bird bath. And we also get ladder-backed. We have some fun predators like the red-shouldered hawk and the barred owl. And once in a rare moon, I will hear the song of a Bewick's wren, and I also see lesser goldfinches quite often as well. Seasonal visitors, we get our hummingbirds. I have a hummingbird feeder that brings them to my patio. I think for the most part, they have now moved on for the year. I took my feeder down and I haven't seen them in my garden. So I enjoy them when they're here. And the same for the summer tanagers. We had those around this summer as well. And then I just listed a couple surprise visitors. I've had a long-billed thrasher. I should mention that my backyard borders kind of a green belt area, a wooded area that I think provides a nice transition of habitat. So I will have quite a few birds that will be in that area and then fly into my yard and then back into the woods. So it is nice to have both of those habitats there. I've seen a great horned owl. Once in a while, I will see an American robin, and then a surprise bird. There was a yellow-breasted chat eating beautyberries last year. So that was one of the rarer birds, or at least rare from my yard, that I've seen. So that's my list. I'd be curious to know if it's similar or different from yours. I was going to try to show you just a couple videos that I've taken of some of my fun backyard visitors, and hopefully they will play smoothly for you all. But this first one is a female summer tanager that was on our patio eating wasps. She had got them from a wasp nest that was in the corner of the patio, and I had told my husband that we should probably take it down because it was close to where we sat, but then I realized it was providing this summer tanager with food. So she took care of the wasps for us. Another one of our fun visitors is, I believe, the red-shouldered hawk here. It looks like he's eating something. I'm not sure what, but they are around. I hear them primarily when I hear the other birds making noise to let everyone know that there's a hawk nearby. They tend to fly into the woods and keep an eye out around my backyard for anything interesting. And then lastly, there's a barred owl here. There's actually two of them that I spotted in my trees. And I have a pretty good bird's eye view because on my second floor, my office looks out onto the live oak trees here. So I always enjoy when I see these beautiful barred owls. All right, so that was a little bit about my habitat, and now I want to talk about how we can make your yard the most popular yard on the block for birds. So I've got three kind of subjects I want to cover tonight. First is, in general, what do birds need to thrive in your yard? And then the second section, I'm going to have some specific Texas native plants that are really good for birds, some of my favorites. And then lastly, just a few design tips to remember as you're building out your native plant garden to make it optimal for birds. All right, so what do birds need? Well, you've probably seen these four things before because they're really the essentials for all wildlife. They need food, shelter, a place to nest, and water. And these are the things that you would need to have in your yard if you were going to apply for, say, a certified wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation, which is something that I've done. It's just the real essentials to making your yard a great place for a bird to live. And I'm going to talk about each of these because the cool thing is our native plants kind of knock out three of the four. They can provide food, shelter, and a place to nest, and then you can help with the water. So let's talk about each of these four. So food, when you think food for birds, I know my thoughts would have initially gone to, I need to put out seed. And that's a wonderful thing. Of course, birds are going to love bird feeders. But really, it's all about the insects. And what our native plants do better than anything else is bring insects into your yard because they are the plants that our local insects have evolved to eat. Something like 95% of plant-eating insects can only eat plants they've co-evolved with, so the native plants in their area. So our native plants really form the basis of the food web, and so the more native plants we can bring into our yard, the more diversity of insects we can bring into our yard, and that is bird food. Especially birds that are feeding their young need a lot of soft-bodied insects during nesting season. So you've probably heard of, a number being thrown out from a Doug Tallamy study that looked at Carolina chickadees and found that they needed somewhere between 6,000 to 9,000 soft-bodied insects just to feed one round of babies. That's a lot of insects that they need to find in a relatively short amount of time in a relatively small area around your yard. So you need to have the right plants that are going to bring those insects in. And that is typically host plants. So host plants are the plants that caterpillars of butterflies and moths can eat. So like the monarch, for instance, only has one host plant, that's milkweed. But there are relationships like that for a variety of moths and butterflies. So knowing what host plants are and finding host plants to put in your yard will definitely bring in those soft-bodied caterpillars that the birds love and they need to feed their young. And with all of this, it doesn't help to bring in plants if you're just going to put pesticides on them once you start seeing insects eating them. We don't want to use pesticides, and we actually want to celebrate holes in our plants because that means that you've got some bird food in your yard. There's insects there. And here's a really interesting finding from another Doug Tallamy study. So why native plants? Why not just any plant to serve that purpose of providing food for birds? And what he found is he compared two fairly similarly landscaped yards, although one had primarily non-native plants to that area and the other had primarily native plants. And what they found was the one with native plants had 29 times more insect and wildlife diversity than the yard with non-native. So even though on the surface they looked relatively similar in the amount of plant material they had, shrubs and trees and things, the one that was using native plants had a lot more life that it was supporting. So that's why natives are so great for our birds. And something you want to keep in mind when it comes to building out your habitat is that you want to have a buffet open year-round for your birds. So how can you incorporate a mix of plants that's going to offer food at different times of the year? So when you think of the spring and summer, birds are going to need a lot of insects during that period of time. That's when they're nesting and raising their young. And that's when our plants are starting to put on new growth and serve as host plants for caterpillars. Their blooms provide nectar for birds like hummingbirds and all the pollinators that they attract. And then as we transition into this time of year, into fall and winter, we have seed heads that can feed birds and plants that produce berries and seeds and other types of food for the birds. So how can you make sure that you have a range of these throughout the year? All right, let's talk about the second essential for birds, shelter. And this one's pretty self-explanatory. So if you were a bird, which of these two yards would you feel safer in? Where could you go quickly to hide from a predator or stay dry in a storm? Obviously, the first one isn't very hospitable. Unfortunately, this is how a lot of neighborhoods and new developments look. Maybe there's a tree or a couple shrubs, but otherwise it's a lot of turf grass. And as a bird, you're looking for more places to seek cover. And so this garden here on the right is one of my friends here in San Antonio. Her name is Pam Peck. She has a beautiful front yard with lots of layers of native plants that is a perfect bird habitat. And the plants that provide shelter are also often good plants that provide places to nest. So anything from grasses to shrubs to trees can all be potential nesting sites for birds. And different species of birds have different priorities or different preferences, I should say, in the types of places where they like to nest. So blue jays would be more up higher in a tree canopy. Cardinals would be closer to the ground in a dense shrub. Wrens, titmice, chickadees all prefer cavities, or in the case of my Carolina wrens, a flower pot somewhere close to the house where they feel safe. So just having a mix of different types of plants will provide different nesting opportunities for your birds. And then the fourth and last essential is water. And this is where you can get creative and will do a lot of good in terms of bringing birds into your yard is offering a water source, especially here in Texas where it's just so dry. Having water, fresh water available to birds is a really great thing that you can add in addition to your plants. And I particularly love these solar bubblers. If you don't have one of those for your bird bath, you should definitely get one. I am going to share a link later on in my presentation of the ones that I use, but they are great because birds are drawn more to the sound of water than they are to the sight of it. So having that little sound of bubbling water will definitely bring birds to your yard. Okay, so those are the 4 essentials. So you want to make sure that no matter what, you've got all 4 of those covered as you're starting to build out your bird habitat. Now I want to get into some more specifics of which plants you might want to add. And I will say that it is not too late this year to add some of our Texas native perennials to your garden. Fall and even winter for trees and woody shrubs is a great time to plant because that allows the roots to really develop over the course of the winter, even though the plant itself might be dormant, but it will make it more uh, able to withstand all the hot temperatures that we'll get next summer versus putting it in the ground in the spring. So if you want to start a list of some plants that you want to add to your garden this fall still in the next few weeks, you should do that. It's a great time to do it. Okay, so just like I had the 4 essentials for birds, I want you to think about 4 layers of your habitat. I want you to start from the ground and work your way up. So we have trees, obviously, shrubs, forbs, leafy plants and grasses, ornamental bunch grasses, and then ground covers. So you want to make sure you've got some in each of these buckets to really start creating a vertical layered habitat. And I have some ideas for each of these that we'll go through, starting with the trees. But first, I want to mention something that I think is pretty interesting when it comes to the types of plants that you pick out of each of those 4 buckets. So there's something known as keystone species. I think this is another term that Doug Tallamy coined from his research, but it's the plants that really are the very best host plants. And it's really just a small percentage of native plants that support the majority of our butterfly and moth species. So it says 14% actually support 90% of all butterfly and moth species. So that is not very many plants that are like the powerhouses when it comes to being host plants. So here's a list of the best host plants that are out there. So if you plant one thing to attract insects, you should make it a tree, and you should make it an oak tree because they support over 500 species of butterflies and moths, meaning that they use the leaves of the tree as their caterpillar food. So, and it obviously takes a long time to grow an oak tree, so you should start now. Hopefully you may already have some in your habitat. They're a wonderful bird plant to have. And there's some other species here of trees that are also really important keystone species. I don't think we have as many of those here in Texas as native plants, but you can certainly look into if there's any species that would work that are native to your area. And then in terms of more herbaceous plants, goldenrod is an excellent one. It supports over 100 butterfly and moth caterpillar species, asters, sunflowers, Joe Pye weed or boneset species, and then morning glory are kind of the top plants in that list. So if you can get a handful of some of these sprinkled into your habitat, you are likely to attract caterpillars for sure. Okay, so going back to the first bucket, which is trees, just a couple things to note here. I have on each of these slides a range map that I got from the Native Plant Society of Texas plant database. It's a wonderful database. I'll share some more information about it at the end of the presentation, but it's really helpful to know where plants are native to in Texas, because Texas is a big state and we're all spread out. So some of these may work in your part of Texas and some may not. And just because it's it shows where it's native here. Even if you're outside of that range, it doesn't mean that it won't work well where you're at too. Some of these are pretty versatile, but just to give you a sense to where you would find these trees growing in the wild, it would be in the blue shaded area of these maps. So starting with live oaks, those are the trees I have in my backyard habitat, but really any oak tree, as I said, is a great addition to your bird habitat. As they grow and become large trees, they provide that canopy layer, shelter, and places to nest. Definitely you're going to provide the caterpillars. Live oaks are interesting. They're almost evergreen because they hold on to their leaves until February, drop them, and then quickly replace them. So it's provides some nice shelter that way. And they do produce acorns, although I read that they provide food for bobwhite and blue jays, but I have a question mark there because I don't think I've ever seen any of my blue jays eating the acorns. I definitely know my squirrels will eat them though, so it's a good wildlife tree. Another great all-around wildlife tree that does get kind of a bad rap for being a bit of a weedy tree or one that doesn't have very strong wood that isn't super long living is the hackberry. But from a wildlife perspective, from a bird perspective, it's an excellent tree. So if you have these growing, keep them. If you want to plant one, you should plant one as well. It can get quite large. It is a host plant to a number of butterflies. One that you may be aware of is the American snout butterfly. Those are butterflies that just kind of appear all at once in droves, and they really emerge when there's new growth on hackberry trees after a period of rain or things like that. So great host plant, and it also produces these little red berries that birds love to eat along with other wildlife. So consider a hackberry tree. And then in terms of some smaller ornamental trees for an understory, the Texas persimmon is a great option. I see that growing a lot in the natural areas around San Antonio. It's a really pretty tree. It's got multi-trunked branches and smooth bark, almost like a crepe myrtle. And then it produces these dark fruits in the summer that birds and other wildlife just totally demolish. They types of birds that will eat them include cedar waxwings, mockingbirds, warblers. I think raccoons eat them, different mammals as well. And you can eat them. They are edible by humans too, if you haven't tried one. Another really pretty understory tree, ornamental tree, is called possum haw holly. This is a deciduous tree, so it will drop its leaves in the winter, and then it's just covered with these beautiful bright red berries, like you can see in the bottom picture there. And lots of birds will flock to those berries, mockingbirds, robins, cardinals, waxwings. In addition to providing that winter buffet, it's a great one for that. It will also provide some caterpillars. It is a host plant to several moths and the Henry elfin butterfly. All right, so that's some tree ideas. As far as shrubs, one of my very favorites is American beautyberry. This is native to the eastern half of Texas. It is an amazing shade plant because it typically grows under trees, and so it thrives in the shade. If you have a lot of shade in your yard, this is a great option. Starting in late summer, it will produce these beautiful, bright magenta berries, and you can eat them, but the birds really like to eat them as well. And I have enjoyed watching a mockingbird, a cardinal, and a summer tanager eating mine this past, I guess early this fall, late summer. So let me see if I can play this video. This is from my kitchen window, so it's not great, but you might be able to see a female summer tanager, perhaps the same one that was eating the wasp, is now munching on the beauty berries there. So that got a lot of action when the berries were first ripe. It's a great shrub to add to your habitat. Another one that I love is called Agarita. Has pretty broad range throughout Texas, very drought tolerant, and it's evergreen, which is great. We can add as many evergreen native plants to our habitat to provide that winter cover for birds. And birds like this as a nesting site because it does have kind of pokey leaves that would keep out predators. And so I do think it offers both protection and food. It is a great nectar plant for pollinators. In the spring, it's one of the first things to start blooming in February with these bright yellow blooms. And then it is replaced by some red berries over the summer that birds like to eat. So try agarita. Another one of my favorite shrubs is a low-growing shrub called Zexminia. It kind of is a mounding shrub that doesn't grow any more than a couple feet high, but it will just be covered in these bright yellow blooms. Really pretty plant. A host plant, as you can see here, it is a plant, a host to bordered patch caterpillars. So this is one of my leaves that I noticed earlier this year. I saw it looked to be a brown leaf, and then I got closer and realized it was covered in caterpillars. And I don't know how long that they were there, if my wren or other birds found them, but when I went back to find them a few days later, they were gone. So either they made their way into butterflies or they were bird food, but your garden should have enough plant material that you can provide for both. So another thing to note about Zexminia is that the seed heads are really popular with goldfinches. I often see goldfinches eating mine, and there was one morning, early morning, I was going to a garden that I was volunteering at, and they had a big Zexminia plant there, and I was the first one to arrive at the garden, and I scared off a huge number of goldfinches that were just in the plant eating the seed heads. So definitely a favorite among finches. Another fun one to add to your bird habitat is a chili pekin. So this is a native chili plant that I guess makes a very spicy salsa. I have not tried it, but birds really don't mind heat. They like to munch on those chilies, and it's a fun way to add some color to your garden. Mine is full of red chilies right now. Supposedly mockingbirds, cardinals, and blue jays really enjoy them. I've been keeping an eye on my plant, and I haven't seen a bird eat it yet. But I know if I keep watching that I eventually will see something eating my chili pekin. So I'd be interested to know if any of you have chili pekin, if what you've seen eating those chilies. All right, the third category is forbs, or flowering perennials and annuals. This mealy blue sage is a standard plant in my garden. It's very drought tolerant, long time bloomer, great at attracting all sorts of pollinators. And once again, the goldfinches will eat the seed heads and the flower buds. So I have this kind of fun video off of my office balcony where a goldfinch had visited on a pretty windy day. First took a drink of water and then started climbing up the skinny little, just a single stem of that mealy blue sage to try to eat some of the flower buds, and went for a ride in the process as it was blown around by the wind, but provided me with some entertainment while I watched it trying to eat that mealy blue sage. If you remember the list of keystone plants, sunflower species are definitely a keystone species. They are very important host plants. And one of my favorite species of sunflowers is a Maximilian sunflower. It can grow to be quite tall, and it blooms in the fall. So a little different bloom period. Mine currently has flopped over, it's so tall, but it's covered in seed heads right now. So I'm leaving it just so the goldfinches can eat those. And similar to the Zexminia, you might find a sunflower leaf just covered with bordered patch caterpillars. Good bird food right there. All right. One additional forb that I really like is cowpen daisy. This one I've incorporated a lot into my daughter's middle school pollinator garden. That's what you see here on the left. It is an annual that reseeds heavily, so you want to plant it somewhere where you don't mind it popping up in other places next year. But it's really beautiful and covered with these yellow flowers that, once again, goldfinches love to eat. And I have a picture here of from Claire Sorensen, a friend of mine, that shows a goldfinch eating the seeds. And then I also caught one at my school garden, bright yellow, male lesser goldfinch munching on cowpen daisy. And then I wanted to include a couple grasses as well. I love adding ornamental grasses to the garden. They look beautiful, they add interest year round, but they also provide for our birds. They provide nesting material, shelter in the winter. They look great and can provide shelter when some of your other plants have died back. Birds will eat the seeds, obviously, and they are a host plant. A lot of our ornamental grasses are host plants to skipper butterflies. So Lindheimer muley is one of my favorites. It gets quite large. Right now it has these beautiful seed heads on it. And like I said, if you can incorporate a handful of ornamental grasses into your garden bed, it just makes it look really nice. This one prefers full sun to really thrive. But there is one that really does well in the shade, inland sea oats, another one of my favorites. It produces these beautiful chevron seed heads that start out green in the summer, and then by early fall, they're this nice golden brown, provides bird food, host to several skipper butterflies as well. And it's just really pretty in a shady area. I like it paired with beautyberry personally. And that brings me to my fourth category. So we started with trees. We want to add a shrub layer and a grass and perennial layer. And then ultimately you want some ground cover as well, so that there's food options and shelter for birds at all four levels. And one of my favorite ground covers is frog fruit because it is a pollinator magnet. It is uh, it grows to be between half a foot and a foot tall. The more you water it, the taller it will get. So I try not to water mine too much, but it is covered with these little white and purple blooms. And on a sunny day, it'll just be crawling with butterflies and little moths and flies and wasps and other pollinators. You can see there, hopefully you can see just how many of them are on this one little small section of frog fruit. So in addition to being a great nectar plant for them and bringing in the insects, it also is a host plant to at least 3 different butterfly species. Looks like it's pretty much native to almost the entire state other than the panhandle. So another great option for a ground cover. And then the other ground cover I wanted to share is a little taller. It can be a foot to 2 foot max, but it has really nice blooms and berries that birds can eat. So pigeonberry will bloom off and on throughout the year, and at the same time we'll also have berries on the plant as well. You can see here the blooms are the pink and the berries are the bright red. It's a really pretty plant. I personally have not had success growing it. I've killed a lot of pigeonberry plants. I don't know why. It must not like my soil, but I've seen it growing very nicely in natural areas and in other gardens, so I recommend you give it a try. But you don't want to eat the berries. They are toxic for humans. And then lastly, I did want to mention hummingbirds because I love having hummingbirds in my yard. Obviously, I put out the sugar water feeder for them, but if you have the right plants, you don't need that. The plants can bring them in all on their own. And in particular, hummingbirds love any type of red tubular shaped bloom. And so I found that these 3 are the perfect combination for my garden. If you add an autumn sage, a Turk's cap, which is a great shade plant, and flame acanthus, you are bound to get hummingbirds stopping by. And just one other thing to note is that even though hummingbirds obviously need a lot of nectar to fuel them, they really need insects more than anything. Somewhere upwards of 70 to 80% of their diet is made up of insects. So already by adding in all these other plants that we just talked about, you're going to bring in hummingbirds because they need the insects that you have in your yard. Okay, and then just lastly, I want to just go over some of the tips that I've already mentioned, but just to recap some of the things you want to make sure you're considering when you're designing for the birds. Because it really just takes even a couple plants to start making a difference. So this is my backyard. 3 or 4 years ago, we had a stretch of St. Augustine grass that was in a pretty full sun area. It didn't look very good by the middle of the summer. It took a lot of water from our sprinkler system to keep it looking good, and we didn't want to continue having to do that. So we took advantage of a rebate from our local water system, the San Antonio water system, and took out the grass, replaced it with native plants in a walking path through the bed, and have seen a huge difference just in a number of both insects and birds that have come to my yard since. But it really doesn't take a whole area like this. You can start small, take out a little grass at a time, even start in a pot like I showed that the birds will find. If you've got the right plant in a pot, the birds will find it and they'll find the insects on it. So just start building back habitat in any spot in your yard where it isn't currently, and you will see a difference. And remember, planting in layers is really important. So think vertically when you're planting for birds, from the canopy layer all the way down to the ground. Do you have plants in each of those, and where can you add more? Another thing to consider is planting in clusters. You've probably heard the idea of planting in groups of threes. Not only does it look more visually attractive, it is more attractive to pollinators as well. They will tend to visit a group of the same species, because that just saves them a lot of work trying to have to fly to another yard to find more of the same nectar and pollen. So planting in clusters will attract more insects and therefore more birds. And just a reminder to think about the 4 seasons. So hopefully the plants that I showed you tonight offer a good variety throughout all 4 of those seasons. And many plants can provide things in multiple seasons. It's not that one plant only provides food in the spring, for instance. A lot of them do are multi-purpose plants. So the more multi-purpose plants you can find, the better. And then now, as we're heading into winter, I would recommend do your best to resist cutting back plants once they go dormant. Leave them up, because that will provide some shelter for the birds over the winter. And leave your leaves, because a lot of insects overwinter in that leaf litter, and that also provides important bird food. So just think about leaving up seed heads, dormant plants, grasses, all of that over the winter is providing birds with a comfortable home. And then I said I would share links to my favorite balcony bird bath. This is one that just hooks on a railing. If you have something like that, you can see the white-winged doves enjoy it. And then the bubbler, which is available. There's all different versions of it. I just linked to one of them, but my only tip is to not add any of the attachments that are like in the picture shown here, because they will spray the water up and out, and then it will empty out your bird bath pretty quickly. So I just leave the attachments off, and it just still does a nice little bubble that doesn't get very high, and that's enough sound to attract the birds while keeping the water in the bird bath. All right, so to recap, really all you need to do to bring on the birds is start taking out some of your lawn, adding more native plants. Remember those 4 essentials: food, shelter, a place to nest, and water, and skip the pesticides. You want to bring in as many insects as you can, and you should celebrate it when you've got insects eating your plants. And then I've talked about the database at the Native Plant Society of Texas, where I got those range maps. It's a great resource. So if there are additional plants you want to look for, or if you live in an area of Texas that didn't have a lot of the plants that I shared tonight native to your area, I would recommend you going to this database. There's over 600, I believe, native plants that are readily available at nurseries, or at least native plant nurseries. You should be able to find the plants that are in this database. And all you need to do is filter the results by your ecoregion. So know what your ecoregion is. And then you can actually filter also by wildlife benefits. So if you want to look specifically for bird plants, there is a filter in that database. So there's a QR code to take you to that. And I will show you kind of what each plant profile looks like. It's quite nice if you want some more information on how to grow any of the plants that I spoke about tonight, or how large they get, or what their sun and soil requirements are. You can search for them in the database, and it will give you kind of a 1-page profile on those plants. So it's super handy. It even includes maintenance tips. So I highly recommend the Native Plant Database if you haven't explored it yet. It's a really great resource. All right, that's it from me. I do have my contact information here. I always welcome emails. I'd love to hear from people if you have questions about plants. And you can check out my website at nativebackyards.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I even have an Etsy shop with garden signs and native plant seeds and quite a lot of things, t-shirts if you want to check that out. And then the QR code takes you to a few more workshops that I offer. So if you liked Bring On the Birds, I have one called Bring On the Butterflies. It talks a lot about specific butterfly host plants that are great for your garden. I have one called Design Your Dream Garden. So if you need help with designing, that one's been really popular. So feel free to check them out. And thank you so much for having me. I will stop sharing in case there are any questions in the chat.
Absolutely. We've got several questions for you. So for those with small backyards, what are some things we should consider when creating our wildlife habitat?
Small backyards. Well, it might be hard to, plant a large tree, for instance, but I think small is perfectly fine. Think about some shrubs and some of the forbs that I listed, and even pots grouped together can provide a habitat. Like I'm amazed what I see just on my office balcony with a couple plants and pots there that, and just with that water feature, it will definitely attract birds. So small can still provide produce results for sure. And I
No,
would say
absolutely.
my only other tip is know what the mature size is of the plants that you choose before you plant them, because a lot of our natives can get big. It's like an American beautyberry, for instance. It can get 4 to 5 foot across when it's several years old. So kind of knowing that in advance before you put it in the ground will help you plan your smaller space a little better.
Absolutely. One other question, when we talk about no pesticides, definitely understand that, but how do you keep ants and scorpions out of the house during drought times like this? And Bob, I'm all in to hear Haeley's answer on this. Last year was my first interaction with a scorpion in my bed in the middle of the
In
night,
the bed.
and
Oh.
I never need to do that again. And I didn't spray, and I have not had another occurrence, but I am open to suggestions so I never have to relive that experience for sure.
Oh, I wish there was an answer. To be honest, we get scorpions in my house at least a couple times a year because I think we're along that green belt area. And just uh, something that I thought was interesting. We moved here over 10 years ago, and one of the first things we were told, we moved from Chicago to San Antonio, but one of our neighbors said, you need to have a pest company come quarterly to take care of the scorpions. And so for years we had a pest, like a Terminex come and spray around the area of our house, the exterior. And then I started getting into native plants and became a master naturalist. And I realized I cannot have a pest company coming and spraying. This is awful. So we stopped that. And I will say that the amount of scorpions we got when they sprayed and the amount we get now, and ants, is about the same. Like I don't notice a difference. So we still got a scorpion now and then when they were spraying, and same with ants. And usually if ants come in the house, I will just put out some ant bait in the house, but I don't do anything outside of the house. I mean, you can keep plants from right up at your foundation, maybe that might prevent some.
And I know, and I don't know, I know a couple years back I had heard where they make like this special paint that
Hmm.
that you're supposed to be able to like paint like around like your doors, obviously windows not really, but like I don't know, apparently you can paint it and it's supposed to keep scorpions out, like it doesn't give them like traction. I don't
Hmm.
know, I haven't looked that up,
Well,
but
I have a response and an answer to the question from our next presenter, who is located right down the hallway from me and
Awesome.
providing answers via text message on some little ones. Was diatomaceous earth will also help. You can sprinkle that
oh
outside your home, and that
yes.
will support that. So,
What I've always said about scorpions is so far in the last 10 years, I've always seen them before they see me. So it's okay. Like as long as I see them first, I'm good.
I
And
did
I
not
normally
see that one that night. It was not good.
luckily I normally find them dead in my house. I normally don't see them living. I don't know if that's good or bad, but
Yeah.
you can always like you're supposed to be able, I think if you put your like bed legs in like cups, like I think glass cups. They can't climb glass. I don't know.
Gee.
I don't know
People
where
do
it
that.
came from, but it was too much for me. It was in my
I
bed,
bet.
and from that point forward, for like the next 3 days, I definitely did not sleep in my bed.
Great.
A couple other good questions. How do you remove the grass? I have a large area with grass that they'd like to get rid of. I think it's a definite overwhelming thing for people to remove that grass, because
Yes.
I know I'm trying to squander some grass under some oak trees right outside my patio, make a small bed, and but I don't want to, I want the easy way out there.
Yep.
Because manual labor sounds terrible. Beth is laughing because she's my coworker and she understands that Emily's in for the shortcut on all the horticulture projects, and she really dislikes that I ask that all the time. But how did you get rid of your grass, and was it easier than the good old-fashioned way?
So because we had St. Augustine, it was pretty easy to remove with a rototiller. We did till that area lightly, and I know tilling in general, you don't want to do a lot of it. It's not great for the soil, but as a one-time thing, it really did get out 90% of the St. Augustine. And then from then on, when I created the bed, I put down a layer of cardboard and a few inches of shredded wood mulch, and that prevented anything that was still there from growing back. So I didn't have any problems with that. Now, if you have Bermuda grass, that's kind of a whole other story. Bermuda is very, very hard to eradicate. And the best success I have had is solarization. So that's using plastic. I've used black plastic, and there's a debate whether black or clear is best. But if you have a really sunny area and you can put that plastic down and make sure it's really held down securely so there's no sunlight or anything that can get in between the layer between the ground and the plastic, and you leave that there for a couple months at least, that will kill the Bermuda grass pretty thoroughly. I did that for a pollinator bed at my daughter's school, and it worked really well, but it's not very nice to look at in those couple months when you have it there. So, but that is one option for Bermuda grass.
I don't know. I just got my tree flower bed. I just got my patio poured actually yesterday. So I hate to tell everybody, but this was selfishly the perfect time for having the seminar, because I got my patios poured and now can landscape around my home. So I'm so appreciative for all the tips and tricks. And so I'm going to try to squander my grass down with you. Joan wants to know what's the name of the herb. I don't remember. And also Barbara asked autumn shades, Turk's cap, and what was the third?
Oh, flame acanthus.
Oh yes, sounds always pretty.
It's a pretty one. Super gentle.
Do you remember what the name of the herb was?
The herb?
Yes.
I might have said herbaceous plants. I don't remember.
I was gonna say, Joan, if you could like elaborate
That would help
a little bit, that would be helpful. So somebody said that they used cardboard layered with mulch and soil, let it rest for 4 months. She said works every time. Oh,
cardboard and mulch is one of my favorite things.
For the scorpions. What herb for the scorpions?
It's called diatomaceous earth. You can get it. It like comes normally in like a little, I think the bag is normally like yellow. I don't know, Beth, like chime in. I feel like it's normally like yellow and they got like bugs on it, and there's
we'll
like a
ask
little, like,
Beth
grass.
to answer during her question and answer. We'll just save that one for Beth. CJ, we've got CJ asked if this was the same, tomorrow's class was the same presentation. It is not. We have 4 different presenters, so each hour of the 4-hour sessions will be different. So we start with Haeley today, bringing birds to the backyard. Beth is going to teach us how to keep plants alive. And then Dr. Arnold from Texas A&M is going to be talking about designing our spaces. He's a landscape design professor at A&M. And then Liz is also going to be talking tomorrow about creating a feeder station in our backyard. So definitely all of those things. So thank you, Haeley, so much. Does anybody else have any questions for Haeley? If not, I am going to put a plug out. Check out our website. And if you have any questions about joining Birding the Border, Haeley wrote a phenomenal blog about that, which during the next presentation while Beth is speaking, I will find that and put it in the link. for any of those of you who have questions about attending the Birding the Border. She was part of the beginner track, which is targeted for our beginner birders, and allows them to kind of stay as a group and bird through all 3 different ecoregions. So you get a great diversity of birds. And we actually have the same bird guide that Haeley had coming back. Mark, who is originally from England, and he is all sorts of funny and a really enjoyable guide, super educational. So if you're just, what I say about the beginner track is you're ready to take that next step and take to birding and travel to bird, the beginner track is a great first step for you.
I would say that I will probably do the beginner track again just so I can have Mark as the guide because he is unbelievably good. He is so great.
Well, thanks. Sally asked if mealworms are a good substitute.
And and I was gonna say I did answer that. So did someone else? Oh, yes. So yes, you can provide mealworms. They're not a good substitute, but your birds will love you. Like if y'all have chickens, chickens go crazy for mealworms. There's no issues with feeding them, but they're not gonna be a great substitute, but they can be a substitute, a supplement. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Barbara asked how rigorous the trips were for Birding the Border. Is there a lot of climbing involved? Some trips are more rigorous than others. As soon as our website's finally updated, we will have kind of a basic information on the rigor level of each trip. I would not say that there's any climbing involved on any trip. On the Devil's River trip, if you want to walk across the Devil's River to see Dolan Falls, there's no way to take you across in a vehicle, so we have to walk across the river. It's about calf deep-ish, and so that's probably the most extensive type of rigor, other than just long flat walks or some walking in some dry riverbed that have that river walk. That to me is pretty another level of challenge versus walking on the road. So not a ton of regular. And if you have special concerns, you can email us and we can try to guide you to the right track. So
we are more than happy to walk through. If y'all are interested in Birding the Border, we're more than happy to chat with y'all and sort of walk you through what would be a trip suitable to your birding level, your skill level, what you want to see, your, physicality wise, what you are and are not comfortable with doing on a trip. So, okay.
Well, Haeley, thank you so much. We
Yes,
super appreciate it. It was great. I'm going to tell everybody one thing that I learned and really thought about as I'm planning my backyard is the planting in layers and the tiers. I think that's one of those things that it makes a backyard area very visually inviting because you have big things and you have little things. And then to me, that's kind of one of those things that I track for that Southern living style backyard, and having some of those shrubberies versus just, I don't know, I always think of my mom. She planted just the little pansies out, and we'd always, but there was never that layering effect. And so I'm going to really strive as I work in my gardening to have that layering effect and that tiered planting that you talked about. So really appreciate that. I'm making lots of notes as I get my backyard.
Well, reach out anytime, Emily, with questions, and anyone else as well. I'm happy to respond to emails. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Haeley.
Thank you.